What is up YouTube? I'm back, and in today's video I'm going to be breaking down the fundamentals of how to get started mining your own cryptocurrencies. In later videos I might get into some more details about profitability calculations and exact hardware, but today we're really just going to be looking at the basics. What is mining and how does it fit into a blockchain? What hardware do you need and how do you go about selecting that hardware at a high level? And then after the hardware, what software do you need and what other things do you need to have in place before you can actually start making a bit of your own money with cryptocurrency mining. So I'll do my best to put as many detailed timestamps down below so that you can skip to the part that you're most interested in. If you enjoy this content, please give this video a like. If you're interested in later videos and some more detail, subscribe to the channel so that you get notified when those videos come out. And leave a comment down below. Tell me what it is that you're struggling with, that you're confused about. What do you want to know? And maybe we can turn it into a video. Without further ado, let's get started. It's the end of winter and I'm trying to get my grass a bit greener. I don't know if I'm succeeding at all yet. I think a good place to start everything off is what exactly is mining? What are you doing when you're mining for cryptocurrencies? And to explain that, we need to explain a little bit about how a blockchain works and what makes a blockchain tick. It's not necessary to have an intricate understanding of all the complex mathematics and hashing functions and the deep technical issues, but it helps to have a broader understanding. To be clear, I'm not an expert in this, so I might get a couple details wrong, but I think it'll demystify things just a little bit for some people. Cryptocurrencies rely on hash functions. A hash function takes a whole bunch of data and encodes it into a sequence of letters and numbers. That sequence of letters and numbers is typically always of a fixed length, so I can give it one letter to encode and it's going to encode it into 256 characters. I can give it 3 pages of data to encode and it's going to encode it into that same length. And what's important about this hash function is it's fairly easy to go from the data to the encoded data, but it is virtually and practically impossible to go from the encoded data back to the data, which is why it's used in security and encryption of sensitive documents and all of that. How this relates to blockchains is this. A bunch of transactions on a network, so say for Ethereum or for Bitcoin or something, a bunch of transactions are grouped together in what's called a block. Essentially, the transactions and the data in that block are fed into this hash function, which spits out a code. That is the hash for that block, and that hash for that block gets added to the next block, and so on and so on. They form a chain of connected blocks, each block having been hashed. Where it gets tricky is that miners have to validate these blocks and these hashes. And they do this by calculating what's called a nonce. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it stands for a number only used once or something like that. The objective of the miner is to find a value or a string of values to add to the existing hash, or the block including the hash, that makes the resulting hash meet a specific requirement. The gist of it is the transactions are grouped into blocks, the blocks are hashed. The miner has to find a value to add to that hash to meet requirements for a new hash. And because you can't work backwards from a hash value to the data that was passed to the hashing function, it's virtually impossible to do this without guessing. In order to find this nonce, a computer needs to take the current hash value, guess what the nonce is going to be, hash it again and see if it meets the requirements. And chances are it's not going to meet the requirements for many iterations of this. That is why it's called proof of work. So much computational work goes into figuring out what that nonce is, because it's just guesswork. And it's as likely for the most powerful computer on the network to get it in one guess as it is for the weakest computer in the network to get it in one guess. At the end of the day, the entire network needs to agree on what the valid blockchain is to protect it from fraud and to protect it from double transactions or double counted transactions. It's these guesses that are being performed by mining systems hundreds and thousands and millions of times per second. If my computer makes 1 million guesses per second, we refer to that as having a hash rate of 1 mega hash per second. This is how miners make money. They pool their resources together to try and calculate these nonces so that they validate the blocks of transactions. Now this is important to the security of the entire blockchain, because the way that hash function works, if I change one single value in a transaction, in a block of transactions, the resulting hash function changes completely. If I want to defraud the entire network, I'm gonna make up a transaction and then I'm responsible for calculating the hash function, the nonce, adding that to the next block of transactions, continuing hash function, nonce. It is something that's almost physically impossible for a single miner to do unless they have 50% control of the entire network. That's why cryptocurrencies are so secure, and that's why miners are so central to ensuring the security of cryptocurrency. Now, not all cryptocurrencies work like this. What I've just explained is a proof of work cryptocurrency. You might have heard a cryptocurrency like Ethereum is rapidly starting to move towards proof of stake, and many cryptocurrencies are already running on that system. Those cryptocurrencies cannot be mined, and this is something that you need to keep in mind when you pick a cryptocurrency that you want to mine. How these hashes turn into rewards for the miner is as follows. Let's say you pool together with a bunch of other miners, and combined, all of these miners are able to do 1 million mega hashes per second. You are able to do 10 mega hashes per second. So you've contributed 10 mega hash to that whole pool of 1 million mega hash. When a block gets solved and validated by your pool, there's a certain reward that is determined by the cryptocurrency and by that specific pool that gets paid to the pool and gets split proportionately depending on how much work each individual miner in that pool did. So your 10 out of the million, it's a very, very small amount, which is why the profits accumulate very, very slowly. And that's also why people want higher performance graphics cards, want more graphics cards, bigger systems. But these bigger systems cost more, firstly, they use more electricity and they generate more heat. This is the problem that we as miners grapple with. There's a lot more that goes into cryptocurrency and a lot more that goes into blockchains than this. I think I've covered everything that pertains to the miners directly. So I hope that helps a little bit. Now that the more complex explanations are done, I think I've earned a beverage. Cheers. The next important question is around what hardware you'll need to get started in mining. And the most important piece of hardware will be your GPU. So this is the GPU that I featured in my first video in February. It cost me $1,500. I bought it secondhand. It kind of, at the time, mined enough Ethereum to pay itself off in 3 or 4 months, which was great. That's not always the case. Because of the demand for graphics cards from both gamers and video editors and miners, graphics cards, especially good ones, are scarce. The secondhand market is the only real place worth buying right now. You'll find people are getting in and out of the mining business, or you have a gamer that's sitting with a graphics card that he realizes is worth a lot more than he initially thought. The most recent graphics card I bought was this RTX 3060 NVIDIA graphics card. Honestly, I don't think I did enough research before buying this card. This was a 12,000 Rand card. What NVIDIA in particular has started doing is they've started limiting the performance of their cards if they suspect any Ethereum mining activity on that particular card. The point of that is so that they can decrease the demand of their graphics cards by miners, so that there's more graphics cards for the gamers. In parallel with that, Nvidia is releasing graphics cards specifically aimed at miners that gamers will not be able to use. There's a whole big debate and a lot of animosity between the gaming and the mining group. The main result is graphics cards are scarce and they're expensive. So do your research before buying one. You don't want to end up with a card that's not going to perform the way you expected it to. I will add to that though to say that miners aren't the only people using graphics cards. Gamers need them too, video editors need them. There's a broad range of applications for graphics cards. So if you do get into the mining game, you do end up investing money and it turns out it isn't for you. If you've looked after your card, you're either going to find another use for it that justifies the difference between the money you made from the card and the money you paid for the card, or you're going to be able to sell it for hopefully a significant portion of what you initially bought it for, granted that you looked after it properly. And the main thing there is, don't let your card run on a cheap power supply and don't let it get too hot. Also, don't do anything in the overclocking settings that you aren't entirely comfortable with doing. Something that I found in my experience is that looking at all of these online mining gurus, they are very easily disappointed with a card that doesn't pay itself off in 3, 4, 5 or 6 months. I don't think that's entirely justified, and I think the reasoning is in South Africa we don't necessarily have access to these massive corporations that do same-day delivery and we can just order and have something shipped here for a reasonable price. The big companies that we ship from, we have to worry about shipping and import duties, and the local companies just don't really have the stock for the exact same reasons we don't have that stock. Our standards naturally need to be a little bit lower. You can get lucky. You can sit on secondhand forums 24/7, 7 days a week, and maybe find a massive bargain. But the guys selling these cards know what you're looking for, and they're gonna put a premium on it because of that. Now, once you have a graphics card, I would say the next most important component is the power supply. The power supplies can get quite expensive, but the reason is if you run a graphics card on an unreliable or underpowered power supply, you will potentially ruin that graphics card beyond the point of no return. You can absolutely destroy a graphics card with a cheap power supply. That's the end of it. That's your mining game over, and you would have lost a significant amount of money, probably both in the power supply and in the graphics card, and potentially in the rest of your system as well. So what does this mean for someone looking for a power supply? You need to know the power requirements of your entire system. Those details we will get to in a later video. You also need to make sure that the power supply can deliver that power reliably and that it has built-in protection for power surges, power outages that are so common in this country, to make sure that if something goes wrong with the power coming into your PC or something fluctuates either inside or external to your PC, nothing is going to damage the power rails on your graphics card or your other components. This is incredibly crucial, and I think it's majorly overlooked, not just in mining rig builds, but also in gaming PC builds. It's an easy place to save some money. It's that saving that risks your entire system. After your power supply, the rest of the components can basically be anything that gets that system to run and gets it to run the operating system that you want it to run. Couple details there, the differences between Windows and Linux. Details for a different video. You need a motherboard for the graphics card to slot into. You need a CPU to be mounted on that motherboard. You need some amount of RAM, not incredibly fast, expensive, or particularly large capacity RAM, but just enough to get the system to run. You need storage. A lot of guys recommend SSDs. Personally, I use flash drives. It's not recommended because I think flash drives are prone to failure, but honestly I can burn through quite a few flash drives before I reach the price of an SSD. Lastly, you'll need some sort of cooling solution and probably a case or frame to mount the system in. When it comes to cooling specifically, this is a crucial part of the entire system. As I mentioned earlier, running your graphics card too hot can do permanent damage to the card and even cause it to fail entirely. In my experience running a single graphics card in a system, I don't use too many fans to control the temperature. The built-in cooling of the graphics card for the graphics cards that I'm running is generally enough. So do your research, see if it's a card that runs particularly hot, monitor it for a few days, and see if it typically passes over the 60 degrees Celsius range. That's where I feel most comfortable. A lot of guys will tell you you can run your cards a lot hotter. Personally, I prefer not to do that. As far as hardware goes, that's pretty much it. You need a GPU that's doing all of the work. You need a power supply to power that GPU and the rest of the system. You need a motherboard that GPU fits in and works in, is compatible with. You need a CPU to go into the motherboard. You need RAM or memory. You need storage of some sort and cooling. You got that, you sorted. You have yourself a mining rig, and you potentially have a PC that you could use for other things as well. So Ziv and I need to pop out for a quick lunch arrangement with her parents. I'm gonna pause the explanations quickly and I'll continue when we're there. Hey boy. Okay, so we're here now. I figured I'd finish up the explanation while we're here before we have some lunch and enjoy the rest of our day. Once you have your hardware in place, the next thing you need to worry about is software. And that covers quite a broad range. Firstly, you need to figure out what operating system you're going to use. If you have an existing computer that you're going to use for other stuff and only mine part-time, you're probably going to be sticking with Windows. Or if you have any plans of using that PC for something else, you'll probably be sticking to Windows. Otherwise, my recommendation would be HiveOS. It's a Linux-based operating system and it's made just for mining. It's really easy to use and monitor, and it integrates well with the Hive-On pool. Which takes me to the next thing that you'll need. You'll need mining software, so the program that actually does all of the mining. I use LOL Miner, I've used Phoenix Miner in the past. There are multiple different programs. You're gonna need to go and figure out which software mines your particular cryptocurrency the best. So each cryptocurrency has a different algorithm. So depending on what cryptocurrency you're mining, you might need a different algorithm, which means you're gonna need a different program, a different piece of mining software. That software needs to be configured with two key pieces of information. The first and most crucial piece of information is the wallet that you are mining to. Personally, I mine to Coinbase, and then from there I decide where I want that crypto ending up or whether I want to withdraw that crypto into something else. I don't think Coinbase is a generally recommended platform to mine directly to, and I'm not 100% sure why. Honestly, I'm not bothered by it. The next crucial piece of information is your mining pool. So personally, I've been using Hive-On pool for everything. In the beginning, I used Spark pools, which was also great. I didn't have any issues with that, but it's just because I've now been relying on HiveOS a little bit more. Hive-On pool integrates seamlessly, and I think your fees are a little bit lower. And that's it. Now you understand a bit of the mining. We know what hardware we need. We need a GPU, a power supply, motherboard, CPU, storage, and some cooling and a case to put it in. If you already have a computer, chances are you're probably just going to check that the power supply is powerful enough, get your graphics card, pop it in, maybe upgrade your power supply. You're ready to mine. All you need to do then is decide which operating system you're going to use. You need to pick the mining software that you're going to run. You need to configure your miner. HiveOS again makes this very, very easy. Otherwise, there are tons of tutorials online, and we'll probably cover a bit of that in later videos. And then you're ready to go. You're making some money. I hope I've clarified a lot of the issues that might stop someone from getting into mining, or at least given you an idea of the steps that you need to go and research before you get a graphics card and get into mining. In later videos, we'll jump into a little bit more detail. I'd really like to take you all through the process that I follow in buying hardware, figuring out what to mine, monitoring it, and calculations around the profitability of that mining. But until then, if you enjoyed this video, if you enjoy this channel, please give this video a like, subscribe to the channel. It really helps me put out better content, lets me know what you're enjoying, what you're not enjoying. And if there's anything specific that you want to see in a future video, please put it down in the comments below. I always love hearing from people. Until next time, cheers.